Welcome, everyone. We're so glad to have you here tonight. And we have the A team of Elizabeth and Irene with us, and we're very excited to hear what they have to say. So, our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at the Helping Parents Heal meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. However, these Zoom meetings are very healing to parents all over the world, and they are all posted on YouTube so that affiliate members who are not in our time zone can also watch. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. So welcome, everybody.
And thank you, Lynn, and welcome everyone. You likely have heard of Shining Light Parents, where you're going to meet three fine ones in this session. But those of you who perhaps haven't, we think of grieving parents, deeply grieving parents, as a term, the understandable term for how parents are when their children pass on, change worlds. And of course, they feel much deep sorrow, sadness, loneliness, guilt, many times anger, and so on. That's the way it often is. However, some of these parents find a way, a path, a journey to really knowing deeply that their kids are shining lights now. Their kids are living in realms characterized by love and light. And these parents know that they can sense their child's presence the most when they're on a similar wavelength as their kids. And that's a primary motivator then for moment by moment consciously choosing to focus on higher energies, higher emotions, peace, joy, love, gratitude for the time together, and so on. Well, I've met a number of these parents. I've been interviewing them for the last 5 months. They're some of the most remarkable people I've met in my life. Now, I've met a lot of people, and collectively, I think these Shining Light parents present real hope for our planet, for reaching that tipping point. For all these reasons, I'm so honored to be here and be part of this. And if we want to learn more about that process from deeply grieving to shining light, see article number 82 I wrote on my website, soulproof.com. I just want to take a moment to tell you about some important resources that Elizabeth has posted so that you're aware of these. So many resources Helping Parents Heal has, and all free. So if you go to the website, helpingparentsheal.org, and then at the top tab, select YouTube videos. And the first sub tab below that says Affiliate Leader, Caring Listeners, Interviews. Then you'll see a page. You'll see Lynn and my photos. And then below that, first of all the YouTube videos so far. And you can watch these again for free on the site or on YouTube. Also, next is a link about how to find an affiliate group closest to you. Next, about Caring Listeners, this wonderful group of 35 or so parents we have who are willing at no charge to listen, share with you what worked for them, walk hand in hand, as one parent said. When you can't walk, we'll carry you until you can walk. So make sure you use these Caring Listeners. There's a link for the calendar of online events, one or more events almost every evening, wonderful speakers and mediums, and so on. Next, there are links, which mean you can click on them and see the videos where I presented four experiential sessions, the 4 most useful ones for parents who have had a child change worlds. And you'll see those 4, and there's a little description of what they are for. So use those. Those are gifts. And then a list of the most commonly recommended articles that are all free at soulproof.com. And then finally, links to radio shows where I asked a number of experts on consciousness and afterlife: Wayne Dyer, Raymond Moody, Gary Schwartz, Brian Wise. I mean, you name it, Anita Moore, Johnny, Carolyn Mays. It's just so many wonderful people. It's such an honor. Michael Newton. Oh my God. And I asked them the same questions. And one is, what do you say to parents who have had a child pass? So make sure you avail yourself of all these free resources. And if there's anything else you need, reach out, get a hold of us. We're here to help. So with that in mind, we'll start with Lynn this evening. Lynn and I have been doing these interviews for 5 months, so it's a real treat to interview her. She has so many gifts. Lynn, tell us about dear Devin, his life and passing, please.
Well, first of all, I want to say it's an honor to have done these with you, Mark, and just to be with my sisters here tonight and all of my HPH family. So thank you guys. So when I got pregnant, I thought for sure I was having a girl because that's all I knew was girls. I'd never really been around boys, and out pops this boy and is like, oh my gosh, now what? What would I do with him? So I take him home and I lay him on the bed and I change his diaper and he wets all over me. And I fall to the floor, half laughing, half crying, thinking, what is my life going to become? And I knew then that I was going to be the student and this little baby was going to be my teacher. So Devin, as an infant, he was very intense looking at people. He would just sit there and stare at us and with this intense look. And my mom was babysitting him one day, and I went to pick him up, and she said, you know, I think he knows us from a past life and that we've all been together again or before. So that was kind of, a new thought for me. My mom was a little more progressive than me and had given me books to read, but that's kind of how it started with Devin.
Mm.
And Devin was, I don't know, he knew things he shouldn't know. Like he was 19 months old and he was sitting in his high chair and at the table, and he started pointing at a cereal box to letters, and he would say the letters, and Jeff and I would just look at each other like, where did that come from? So where did he learn that, and why does he know it so young? And he was always a lifelong learner. You could give him a book at 2 years old, and any magazine book, didn't matter what the subject was, and he would just sit there and turn the pages and intently look at them. And that continued throughout his life, just loving to read, loving to learn. And he loved to teach us everything he was learning. And more importantly, he loved to quiz us about what we were learning and what he was teaching us. So dinner conversations at the table never lacked. We had to not only answer his questions, but defend our answers. So Devin was funny, joyful, always kept us entertained. And after he graduated from college, he graduated with an economics degree, but that was not his passion. Teaching was his passion, and we all knew it. So he went to Prague and got a job teaching English and was loving life, living his best life. And he had gone to Frankfurt with an acquaintance to attend a concert, and somehow they got separated. They'd been drinking that night and they got separated. And we got a phone call the next day from the young man that he was with saying, I don't know where Devin is. He didn't show up at the hostel that night and just don't know where he is. So that night, a light crossed my room and the word river came into my brain, and I knew then and there that Devin was in the river. But I wasn't really ready to go there, but I did go downstairs. I didn't tell Jeff what had happened. And I said, Jeff, where's the river? I didn't even know if there was a river in Frankfurt. But that kind of started my journey. And I went to a psychic a couple days later, and the psychic said, Devin will be fine. And I put that in quotes. And it'll take you 4 weeks to find him. Well, as we know, our kids are fine. Not really the fine that we wanted, but they are fine. And it was 4 weeks to the day before they found him in the river.
Oh, gosh. Thank you for sharing that. First of all, for highlighting, what a special soul he is. As you know, so many of these parents have said similar things: intense, love to learn, kind, enthusiastic, wanted to pack it in. So yeah, evolved souls don't have to be here for very long. Reading letters at 19 months. Good grief. So I have a question. When you said you saw a light cross the room, did you see that outwardly, like you're seeing me, or more in your mind's eye?
I think it was outwardly. We have a window over our bedroom door into into this room, and it came in through that window, crossed the room, and went out an exterior window.
Boy, that's a powerful one. And do you think that helped you at that moment, or did the impact from that, the blessing, the grace, kick in over time?
It helped me then, but it also, it took a while to process. I wasn't really ready to go there in my mind, especially after the psychic said he would be fine. I needed something to grab onto.
Sure.
you know.
Okay. And then finally, I'd like to ask you, said, and that started your journey. And can you say a little more about that, please?
Well, we went to Frankfurt. We spent a month, well, not a month, but just under a month there. Jeff went before me, and I don't know, I had a medium call me, and she became my lifeline because I could not talk to my own family and friends and let them know how I was really feeling. So talking to this stranger was very helpful. And in Frankfurt, the people were amazing. They embraced us. They, at the time, I couldn't really see the blessings that they gave us, but in hindsight, I don't even know how to describe it. They were angels.
Mm, mm, beautiful. Thank you. So usually I ask, how did you discover helping parents heal? But you were actually pre-HPH. Tell us about how that worked out.
Well, Jeff and I hooked up with Mark and Susie Ireland within a month after they found Devin's body, and they became our lifeline. And I remember there were a couple times we'd call them at 9 o'clock at night after having a tough day and say, hey, what are you doing? Can we come over? And, they were just our support at the time. And so that was probably in January that we had met them. In December of 2010, Mark and Susie said, well, we've been invited to this party, and there's this woman there, and she's like an angel. She's so nice. You're going to love her. Well, we all know who that was. It was Elizabeth. And we just all started socializing at that point, and we would go to a restaurant, and there would be so much laughter and so much joy at our table. It's just like we were talking about our kids and laughing about them. And I remember several times we would say, do you think anybody else has any idea what our common denominator is here? And, look at her. I mean, she's just perfect. And she became the leader of our group and started helping parents heal and look at it today.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've had a couple parents who said they were around some of those early get-togethers, and they said, I want that, I want to be that way. So yeah, boy, talk about energy. So I know you're not one to talk about yourself, but share please how it is you serve now.
Well, I'm a caring listener, and I don't know, I think my strong points is I'm a good listener. I'm calm. I like to hear about other kids and parents' journey with their kids, and I think I bring hope and possibility of joy into another parent's life.
You definitely do. And then, of course, this project we've been doing together. So, yeah, I'll just speak for Lynn. She does a lot more than she's saying. She's one of the go-to gals. So what have you learned over the years about how you can optimally sense Devon's presence? And this may help other parents, of course.
Well, it's been pretty easy with Devon. He knew how to get attention in this life, and he knows how to get attention in the next life. So
Mm.
he is in our face a lot, and he knew how to get to mediums, and he knew how to get the mediums to contact us. So that has not been a problem at all. But we sense it in the beginning. He was with us a lot. Lights would turn on and off when we'd be talking about him. Music would turn on and off. Numbers have always been a big thing for us, and we've actually seen him move things, and thankfully we've had witnesses that things have moved. So it's been exciting. And I have to say, in the beginning, even though I was a grieving mom, I couldn't wait to wake up just to see what was going to happen that day. I mean, it wasn't all fun and games. There was a lot of sadness, but it was also an adventure.
Yeah, I'll share. This is a number of years ago when we were becoming friends with Jeff and Lynn, and I was out weeding one point in the flower beds, and all of a sudden it just came really strongly onto me. You should call Jeff and Lynn. And so I did, and I said, and I don't know why this came out. I'm a big Marvel comics guy, and Spider-Man was one of my favorites. And I said, my spidey senses were tingling and told me to call you today. And they said, wow, thank you so much. This was I think it was his birthday.
His birthday, yeah.
Yeah. And they said, and you don't know, but Devin was all things Spider-Man.
Oh, seeing if I had my little Spider-Man. So when I was in Frankfurt, Devin had this little Spider-Man, little toy Spider-Man, and I kept that in my pocket the whole time I was in there. So we kind of think of him as Spider-Man.
Yeah. So, and I had another something happen. I don't quite remember the details. And Lynn said, yeah, the puppet master, Devin, the puppet master is at it again. He said, we're all just kind of like puppets and Devin's running the show. So
yeah, we do feel like, when Devin says jump, we jump. So
yeah, so I've got to ask though about this. He was able to move things and there were witnesses to that. Can you tell us more, please?
So once we were in Chicago, and this was in the first year, and it was in November. So we were in a store, Marshall Fields, and they were getting ready for the lighting of the Christmas tree. And it was Jeff and I and our daughter Kelsey. And a lot of people were down by the Christmas tree, and we were walking by this table, and it was full of candy, and there was a security guard there. And I walked by, and this box of candy, I mean, it literally leaped off the table. I turned around and kind of laughed, and and they kind of laughed, and it's like we've all said, "Oh, Devin." And the security guard said, "Oh my gosh, did you see that box? It leaped off the table." And it's like, "Oh yeah, don't worry, that's just our son." So I don't know that he found the humor in it, but we all did. And then another time we were in Boston with some parents of one of Devin's friends, and we were all sitting around talking about Devin, and a rock leaped out of a pot, and they witnessed it also.
Hmm. Wow. And from what we know with soul science research, it takes a certain amount of wherewithal, energy, focus to do that. Post-material persons, those who have passed on have the density, they can move, but it's not an easy thing, kind of like the penny going up in the air in the movie Ghost. And you remember how Patrick Swayze had to work at it and strain at it. Well, beautiful. So what are three things that you've learned, Lynn, that you'd like to pass on to other parents?
Well, I've learned that we all need a connection, and that connection can come in many different ways. You can connect with nature, whether you go out and walking or bike riding or hiking, gardening, just a connection with the earth is very healing. It was healing for us for sure. And a connection with animals. We have a connection with birds. That's another story, but birds have a lot of meaning with us. And if you came into our house, you'd think we were crazy bird people, which we kind of have become. And, a connection with our dog who showed us unconditional love and was just what we needed. So whether you're into horses, birds, insects, whatever, just a connection with animals. And we all know connection with people is vital. And just having this group is amazing. The opportunities to connect via Facebook, the affiliate groups, caring listeners, however, in person, however you connect, it's a blessing. And I've also learned that sometimes you have to give up your old way of thinking to allow for the miracles to happen. And you might lose some friends during that, and that's okay. I mean, our own daughter has had a hard time coming along on this journey with us, and that's been a challenge for us, but it's opened up new people to come into our life, and some of our old friends we have brought along. And so I've learned that, and just be open to the miracles. They're out there every day. And, even if you think you're making it up, and half the time I probably do make it up, but that's okay. It brings me joy and makes me laugh and keeps our kids with us.
Beautiful. Thank you. And finally, from a limited earthly standpoint, the passing of a child at any age seems like a senseless tragedy. But what have you learned, and what are your beliefs about there being a timing and a meaning behind when and how Devin passed?
I definitely do think there's been a meaning, and I had thoughts while he was in college that he might pass young, but as it never bothered me, strangely. It just was kind of in the back of my mind, but I wasn't a worried mom about it. And I remember when we were taking him to the airport to go to Prague, and why I said this, why I remember it, I don't know, but I can tell you exactly where I was, where he was. And we were walking out the door, and I said, Devin, if something happens to you, I'm going to be sad that I don't know any of your friends. And then I changed it to, no, you're going to be sad that I don't know any of your friends. And now we know a lot of his friends. I thank him for bringing them to us. And I don't know, there was some knowing back there.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, we've heard that a lot, and consider that some sort of warning or preparation. Again, Grace. Well, pass on my kudos to your mom, please, for sharing that with you. Seems like he knows us from another life. I mean, that's not many moms,
Yeah.
especially from her generation. So go, mom.
Yeah, it's been nice to have her on this journey with me.
I
She's my
bet.
she's my biggest fan club.
Well, thank you very much. That was
Thank
wonderful.
you.
If I'd known you were going to be this good, I would have put you in the first group. All right, Irene, you're up. Tell us about
Right.
your Carly, please, her life and passing.
Sure. My daughter, Carly Elizabeth Hughes, was born on her due date. She came into this world screaming, and she was full of life, vibrant. Um, she was just, she was a great, she was a great kid. And I, like Lynn, always had that gnawing feeling that Carly was not going to be here for a long time. I just always felt that way. And people would say to me, well, it's because you only had one child, you're a little overprotective. And at her memorial service, one of my friends who I was in Lamaze class with reminded me that when Carly and her son Ryan were about 6 or 7 years old, I said to Nancy, will I still be a mom if something happens to Carly. And she said, Irene, why would you say that? And it's, again, always that thought. Carly was very precocious. I love this story. She was about not quite 4 years old. And we were in the grocery store. She wanted a treat, and it wasn't a treat day. And she had a little mini meltdown. And she turned to me and said, out of all of the mothers in the universe, why was I born to you? And the woman behind me online turned around and said, that was pretty heavy. You know, I've thought about that a lot in the days since she's no longer here. And I know, you know, out of all the mothers in the universe, why I was chosen to be her mom, because we soul planned that together.
Yeah.
She went on to go to Boston College. She was brilliant. She loved school. She was education major. She wanted to be a teacher, and she had a secondary degree in math. I don't know where that came from, but she loved math and lived math. And all of the years that I worried about her and thought that something would happen to her at her college graduation, I turned to my husband, who's not her dad, and I said, I can't believe I spent all these years worrying about her. And look, she's graduating college, she's got a job, she's going to have this great life in Boston. And I felt this relief. And 11 months later, she was diagnosed with esophageal gastric cancer, one of the youngest people to be ever diagnosed with it. And she passed after only 4 months.
Say she passed 4 months after the diagnosis?
After the diagnosis, yes.
Yeah. Oh my. So yeah, the gnawing feeling that she wouldn't be long for this earth. Boy, that's so common when we ask these parents to share. And looking back, do you feel like that prepared you, at least somewhat?
I don't know if it prepared me, but I remember feeling that sense of I was right. Just that, you know, it wasn't me. I wasn't being overbearing or overprotective or everything that people told me. It was just deep down in my soul. I knew she was not going to be here for a long life.
And what year was that she ascended?
She passed, actually, this Saturday will be 11 years. So February 17th in 2013.
Okay. And so tell us, please, how did you discover Helping Parents Heal, and how did they help you initially?
Shortly after Carly passed, like most parents, I started exploring about the afterlife, because I knew that that love that Carly and I had for each other, that love couldn't have died. You know, now I know that death means nothing more than the loss of your physical body. At that time, I didn't know that. And one of the first books that I read was Proof of Heaven by Eben Alexander. And it took me a very long time to read. Like most parents, reading was difficult. Everything was difficult. But I read the book, and it brought me so much comfort. And I found out about Eternia, which Dr. Alexander was on the board of Eternia, part of Eternia. And when I went to that website, I found they were promoting Mark Ireland's book, Soul Shift. So I got Mark's book, read Mark's book, found out about Helping Parents Heal, reached out to Mark, and Mark encouraged me to contact Elizabeth, who is the best caring listener that we have. And that began my journey with Helping Parents Heal.
So share with others, and don't be modest, please, all the ways you're serving now.
Shortly after Carly passed, we moved from New Jersey to South Carolina, and Elizabeth encouraged me to start a chapter in South Carolina, which I did, which was just wonderful. It was so wonderful to connect with other parents. And I really enjoyed my role as an affiliate leader. And it was, I guess, about a year after I started my affiliate group, I had gone to a couple of different afterlife conferences. And I mentioned to Elizabeth that, why didn't we have a conference for Helping Parents Heal? She very kindly asked me if I had any idea what went into conference planning. I said, well, I'm a retired dental hygienist. I mean, how hard could it be? So
Oh,
Elizabeth said, okay, let's do it. And it was it was a little bit scary, but we kept asking the kids to help us with it. And everyone who had been to the first conference knows what how wonderful that turned out. And from that, I was invited to join the board, and I'm now vice president of Helping Parents Heal. I am also a caring listener. I am the conference co-chair with Elizabeth. I am the co-affiliate leader of the online group Helping Parents Heal, All Our Children, Only Child, for those of us that no longer have a child that walks this earth. And with my lovely friend, Kathy McManus, who I see is on here, Kathy and I co-lead a chat once a month, just to give people a place to talk, to come. It's a wonderful, wonderful chat. And we started it during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, Kathy and I had the chat twice a week. And we continued that for a long time. And now we do the chat once a month. I also co-host the nightly Zoom meetings with Elizabeth. And, we're very busy with the conference planning for the next conference in August. We have 1,000 slots, and 976 slots have already been taken. The hotel is sold out. We have the overflow hotel. So I can honestly say at 11 years out that I never could imagine that I would be in this place right now, this place of grace and gratitude, this place where I wake every morning and say, what can I do to honor Carly, and how can I help someone else?
beautiful. And those viewing, this is what I was talking about, the shining light parents. You hear what she just said. Even though her only child passed, she experiences high levels of peace, joy, love, and so on. And partly because of signs and contact with Carly. Tell us, what have you learned? How does that work best with you too?
Yeah, and I always have to mention this because for all of us, there are shifts in our journey. And when a shift happens, it just takes you to a new level of your journey. And I tell everyone, one of the greatest shifts I had was a conversation I had with you, Mark. And it was when you were on the board and we were speaking about something I don't remember. And I was telling you some of my struggles, and you said, how cool is it that Carly got her work done in 24 years and got to go home? And here we are still plugging away day by day. And it was just like this major aha moment. And it just was like all of these things just fell into place. And it made a very big difference in my journey and in my life. So yes, I have learned that I can continue to communicate with Carly, that I still have a relationship with her. She just doesn't have a body any longer. And I will always be her mother, and I will always be a mother. I talk to her all of the time. I encourage her to send me signs, which I get in the forms of songs and rainbows and dream visits. I've had some very, very vivid dream visits. And in one of my dream visits, I asked her, I said, are you with me? She said, I'm always with you, but I'm busy. I have a life here. So if you call on me, I'll be there. But I have things to do. Just like that. Like, I'm busy, Ma.
Still a dynamo.
Still a dynamo.
Yeah.
I also recently, just a week after her birthday in October, I had a dream visit, and I was at the conference, the upcoming conference, and I couldn't get into my room. And I had to call maintenance to come and remove the lock to my room. And when I got into my room, Carly was in the room with a bunch of girls, and there were clothes piled everywhere, and they were putting makeup on, and they were chatting and having fun. And it was just, I was like, you're here. She said, well, of course we're here. I said, well, can you help me pick something out to wear, for the conference? And she said, do that? I have to worry about myself and what I'm going to wear. Find something yourself. So I thought, oh, typical Carly. And I left. And when I left and shut the door, I realized that all of the girls in the room with her were all girls in spirit.
Oh my gosh.
It
Ah.
was just incredible. And then next day, I got a pair of jeans. They arrived, and that's another long story. And when I put them on, I thought, oh my God, these jeans are great. They're stretchy. They look good. And I ripped the tag off and looked, and the jeans were called the Carly.
Oh my goodness. I hadn't heard
So
that one.
she was too busy to help me dress for the conference, but she made sure that pair of jeans arrived that said the Carly.
Whoa,
So,
that's a good one.
yeah, that's a good
Book team, make sure we get that one in the book.
one.
Yeah, that gave me goosebumps. So what are 3 things you've learned, Irene, that you'd like to pass on to parents?
I tried to get it to 3, but it might be 3.5 or 4.
All right, we'll give you 4.
Okay. What I stated earlier, that death is really the loss of your body only, that life and love are eternal. And as Gordon Smith says, you can't die for the life of you. And Elizabeth and I just love that, and we love to talk about that. I'd also like to tell everyone there is absolutely nothing that you could have done as a parent to prevent your child's passing. That guilt and blame are just pointless. They'll do nothing for you in your journey. And learning to live day by day and to be here now, as Ram Dass said. You know, we have today. We can't do anything about yesterday. We don't know what the future is going to bring. So let's concentrate on this moment right now. And that really, really helps, especially for those early in grief. And the next one I just love, and this is what's helped me a lot, that surrender does not mean giving up. That when we come to a point of acceptance of what has happened to us and what we are going through, it really brings peace. And again, Ram Dass said, you know, we're all just walking each other home. Finding your community, finding your peeps. This group, they're my family. Lynn, Elizabeth, Kathy, Roseanne, these are my people. I mean, I have made an entire new family, and I'm so grateful for that.
Interesting you mentioned Ram Dass twice. I went through a really tough spell in my life at age 21, and I was working as a respiratory therapist. I came down to the staff room, and somebody had laid his book, Be Here Now, on the table. And I saw that, and there was just a knowing to read it, and that turned me around. I mean, that was a big part of my spiritual journey, launching. So how about your view on there being a meaning and a timing behind Carly's passing?
Well, I don't only believe it, I know it. I know her passing was soul planned. I've been shown it in regressions that I've done, in talks with mediums, but most importantly, I know it here in my heart. I just know it, and that has helped me tremendously. It really has.
Oh my, so much power. Again, viewers, I recommend you watch these videos twice because there's no way you're going to get everything in one go through. First of all, what they're saying, but then secondly, how they said what Irene just said, I know. And you see that strength of spirit, that certainty, and you can have that as well. So anything else you'd like to share before we move on?
No, I would just like to touch on language. And, you know, Elizabeth and I really have made it our mission to change language as it's associated with grief. I mean, I think that's something I feel so strongly about. Words are so powerful. Yep. I don't want to be known as a bereaved parent. To me, that is the saddest word in the dictionary, and I cringe every time I hear it. I'm a shining light parent. I mean, the difference in the energy when you say one or the other. You know, we're doing our best to teach people. We never say the word commit. We say completed, or, you know, any of the other words that parents who have had children pass by suicide use. I've gone so far as an author that I've written to her because she committed suicide in her book. And I told her who I was and how it's my mission to change the language around death and grief. And grief, oh, that's another word. Yes, there is such a thing as grief and grieving, but Elizabeth and I really want to encourage everyone to change it to healing.
Okay, all good points. Yeah, and speaking of words, so you said earlier, Carly's okay, or Carly's still here. She just doesn't have a body. And if we want to use specific language, we'd say she doesn't have an earthly body, because again, the research by Dr. Schwartz shows that they do or can have physicality, density, and that's been by different studies. So yeah, and the more it basically comes down to everything about the kids still exists except this earthly shell, and we pay so much attention to it, but it turns out to be a really relatively unimportant fragment of who and what they are. And also I'll take this, well, you said words, take this opportunity to share to more people a word that came up by Lisa Arnold last week. And you remind me of it, Irene, when you said you and Carly still have this relationship from the get-go. And so Lisa calls it a soulship, a relationship you have with your child or anyone who's passed, a soulship. And so that's a good one.
That's beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. This is
Thank
just
you.
so special. And now, drum roll, the queen bee, the woman that got all this started. I bring to you Elizabeth. And you're muted.
There we go. I am just so humbled and honored to be here with all of you, but to be a part of this series with all of these incredible presenters, all of these shining light parents who are all working to honor their children, but also to make a difference in the lives of others and to help them understand that their children are not gone. They are still right here, and that they are our biggest cheerleaders and that they move forward with us. Speaking of cheerleaders, do you want me to tell you a little bit about how Morgan passed and maybe how Chelsea passed?
And Chelsea as well. Yeah, their lives in passing.
Well, first of all, Chelsea didn't live long. She only lived for 2 days, and this was in the south of France. I had been on an IV for 2 months before she was born, and the only thing that saved me at the time was the fact that I was getting home to Morgan, and I was so excited about doing so because I'd been apart from him for 2 months because it was very hard to bring him to the hospital. And so my husband took off to Reunion Island. We were in the south of France, and I was alone with Morgan. I ended up with kidney stones and all this other stuff happening, but I was so grateful to be home with him. At that time, I didn't necessarily see the signs that Chelsea was already sending, and I know she was, because of the fact that I was just so exhausted and also happy to be home again. But then 18 years later, so Morgan was 2 when Chelsea passed. Morgan, who was this enormous bright light in any room that he entered. He had the best bear hugs. He was always the advocate of the weak. He was 6'6" and he had a heart to match, and he was always the person who would be there for anyone in class who wasn't able to follow. He knew what it was like because when we came over from France to the United States, he didn't speak English as well as the other kids. So he had a kind of a strange French accent, and he worked to get rid of that accent. And so I think that he always understood what it was like to be different from other kids in the class. And anyway, he was on an exchange program for the second time in Nanjing, China. They were going to go with 2 professors from the University of Arizona, but there were 13 kids that were going to Tibet. but it turned out that the two professors weren't able to go. They landed in Lhasa at 11,000 feet. I didn't realize the professors hadn't gone, but they left the next day and went directly up to 19,000 feet where the base camp of Mount Everest is. And it was way too much altitude change in a very short amount of time.
Mm.
And so all of the kids were very sick on the bus. The girls were throwing up. Morgan was helping to hold their heads. He felt like the dad on the program because he was a senior by that time. He'd already been there. He spoke pretty much fluent Chinese. And so he wanted to help everybody out. But kids were urinating on themselves in the bus. They were delirious. Nobody recognized this as altitude sickness because they were all kind of out of it. Plus, they didn't know what it was. And the Chinese tour guide wanted to get them up to the base camp before nightfall. And so they got up there. Morgan went to bed. He kept getting up during the night, wandering around this yurt, which was a big tent, calling people by the wrong name. But people thought he was just sleepwalking. And the next morning, when they tried to wake him up, unfortunately, he was foaming at the mouth and they couldn't wake him up. So one of the kids had a mom who was a doctor in Washington State, and he called her and she said, get him down the mountain as quickly as possible. So these 13 kids loaded Morgan, who was 6'6", 280 pounds, onto the bus, started down the mountain. The director of the program told me what was happening. He called from Nanjing and said that they were evacuating him. And they gave me his roommate's phone number. His roommate's name is Colin. And when I called, he said, Miss Boisson, it doesn't look good. He stopped breathing. We've taken him back off the bus. We're doing CPR on him right now. And I don't think he's going to make it. So I immediately thought, okay, please put the phone up to his ear. And when he did, I told him that we loved him, that we were proud of him, and not to be afraid. And immediately when I did that, I had the biggest hug from Morgan. I was here in Cave Creek, Arizona, and he was over near the base camp of Mount Everest, and I know that it was his hug. And at that moment, I knew that love never dies. Love lives forever. I knew that Morgan was going to be with me forever. I don't know why, but I found out later that this was a shared death experience. And it spurred me to try to find other parents who were experiencing this same kind of thing when their children were passing. And I was going to meetings in Phoenix, and unfortunately at the time, the support groups that existed were not support groups that allowed any talk about afterlife or signs that we're getting from our kids or anything like that. So I had to, the people would tell me that the moderators, no, we don't talk about that here. And then when I get out to the parking lot, people would come up to me and they'd say, those things are happening to me. Tell me about them.
Yeah.
So it was really exciting. And a week later, I started the Facebook group of Helping Parents Heal.
Wow. And that was how long after Morgan's passing?
A week after he passed, I started the Facebook group. And then that wasn't the in-person meetings though.
Right.
But I had to be able to find other people who were experiencing the same thing that I was, and I knew I would, and I did.
Yeah. So I highlight that, for all of us, and there's no judgment, everybody takes a different time, but, to parents that think you have to grieve and be wiped out for a lifetime, no, not really. Part of that is just a belief, and part of it's a choice, and part of it's a vision. So a way to demonstrate what's possible. So just share with viewers, I mean, for some, they may not have a chance to hear you and Irene and Lynn talk. So share, please, what all you do.
Oh, what I do? So I'm the president and obviously the co-founder of Helping Parents Heal with Mark Ireland, who I was able to meet later on. And I read his book, Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go. And I knew that he understood exactly what I felt. And that was very exciting. And he was our first speaker at the first meeting. So I also am the newsletter editor, and I have an affiliate group, which is Helping Parents Heal Phoenix, Scottsdale, and I'm a caring listener. And I also teach yoga for healing. And I guess that's it.
Oh, there's more.
And I do
So-
a lot of other things that are just smaller
Sure.
back end things for helping parents heal.
Yeah. So you said something earlier that tweaked my interest. And so now we're talking about signs, how you sense your children's presence. And you said you felt like Chelsea was sending signs, but you were so busy you really didn't catch them at the time. Tell me more about that, please.
Well, I know that she was, and I now know that she was the first person to meet Morgan when he transitioned at the base camp of Mount Everest, and she grabbed his hand and led him to me, and that was why I was able to get that enormous hug. And I always like to tell people that, because I think that if a parent doesn't receive that huge hug, they kind of wonder why it didn't happen. I think that it was an incredibly sad time having Chelsea pass, but at the same time, I think that it was her mission to be there for him when he transitioned, to be able to show me that it's possible to have this communication with our kids immediately.
Mhm. And if you don't mind sharing how you learned that Chelsea did meet Morgan and lead him to you.
Well, I've had a few readings, and it's interesting because I don't necessarily pay for a lot of readings, but I just somehow end up meeting people who tell me things. And I was actually filming the Life to Afterlife, Mom, Can You Hear Me? This documentary with Craig McMahon, and Isabella Johnson was there that day, and he wanted us to interact. And so Isabella said, I just want you to know that Chelsea, her mission in life was to leave early because she was going to be the first person to meet Morgan when he transitioned, and she's the one that brought him to you. But I've also heard this from other people as well, and it's kind of incredible. In fact, um, the first real reading that I had with a medium was with Suzanne Wilson, and she came to our house, and the first thing that she said was, I see Morgan, and he's huge, he's enormous, and I see this beautiful girl standing beside him. And she's about, I think she said that she was about 21 at the time. Um, and she has long black hair and blue eyes. And my husband has black hair and blue eyes, and I could just imagine her. And she said, she looks just like Liv Tyler in Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
And I thought, that could very well be, but I was so blown away. She had no idea that I had had Chelsea before this. So I've had so many people. Lisa Wilcoxon also brings up Chelsea all the time, and she says she's a fashion icon in Paris, which is very cute. She's always wearing berets and all these different hats and carrying baguettes and things like that. But it's fun to hear about Chelsea, and I feel sad that I wasn't as open to knowing about these things immediately following her transition. But I sure do know now.
Well, you
I've thought about her now.
Yeah, you had your hands full. And, to those who think God's asleep at the wheel or there's no God or life is horribly cruel and senseless, a 2-day-old child passing. But when you remember she's much more than a child, has eternal and evolved soul. And because of her assistance with Morgan and awakening Elizabeth so quickly, look at all the thousands and thousands of people around the world who've been helped. And you say, okay, is there meaning in that? Does that seem like how a loving creation would work? Yes.
Well,
So
Oh, I just really quickly want to say that it's so important for me for everyone to understand that it's not me. It could have been anyone doing this. It's I feel like Lynn does. I feel kind of like a marionette, and all of these kids are guiding me to do what I do. But whenever anything wonderful happens, I always feel like people have to understand this has nothing to do with us necessarily. What it is they are working so hard from the other side to be able to have us realize that they're still here and that life is eternal and that love lives forever as well.
Yes. So tell us more, please, about how you've learned to sense your kids and in general, what can you pass on for other parents?
Well, one of the things that I have also noticed is that they are very powerful. And especially in the very beginning, I think it's probably because they're really wanting to get the message through. But when Lynn was talking about moving things around, when Suzanne Wilson came for that reading, she told me that Morgan said to look up. And I thought, what does that mean? Look up. Well, the next day I was coming in from the grocery store, and in our garage, this trap on the ceiling had been slid. It was slid all the way open, and underneath it was an electric golf cart. This electric golf cart had a roof on it, but it was plastic. Nobody could stand on it. And not only that, you have to turn on the car to be able to get it out of the way to put a ladder there. And the keys weren't there. So we were just wondering how in the world this happened. Cyril moved the golf cart out, slid the wood back and got everything fixed up. And the next day, and we thought, this is just the strangest thing. How could that have happened? The exact same thing happened when I came home. I smelled insulation and I thought, oh my gosh. I looked up and the same thing was happening. And then I remembered that Suzanne Wilson had said, look up.
Mm,
And I thought, that's just like Morgan to do these crazy things just to show us that he's here. But
right.
lots of those things happened through the years.
Sure. So what's a rule of thumb or two, or no rule of thumb or suggestions for other parents, how they, and especially if they've not had good signs yet?
I think that it's really important, as both Irene and Lynn said, to be able to find your people, because unfortunately, when you are with family, a lot of times family just doesn't understand. And I think that even if they, I think that they believe that by speaking about our kids, it's going to make us sad. And of course, it's exactly the opposite. We want to talk about our kids all the time. So if we start to talk about our kids, they'll try to change the subject. It's the same way with our good friends as well. But I think that there are family members, there are good friends like Lynn's mother, as well as other people who do understand and who do get it. And I think it's important to gravitate to those people so that when you're telling them about these amazing things that are happening, they're not poo-pooing it and saying, no, that couldn't have happened. Just, I'm sorry, but you really need to get over this. You need to stop thinking about your child or whatever. One of the things that I've learned about this journey is that we never, ever leave our kids behind or get over them. They come with us every step of the way. And Morgan is just as much with me right now, as is Chelsea, as they were when they transitioned, and maybe even more so. And I think that being able to wake up every morning, as Irene was saying, with this feeling of gratitude, which I do, I feel so grateful. And Lynn was talking about waking up and feeling like it was almost an adventure. I feel like all of this is so new, or it was when Morgan transitioned, but there's so much to learn and so much fun stuff to be able to try out in terms of communicating with our kids. There are so many different ways to communicate with our kids. You can do it with a pendulum. You can do it in meditation. Meditation could be on a bed with your legs crossed, or it could be walking in nature, which is what I did for a year after Morgan transitioned. I went to the top of every single mountain around my house because I felt like that was really important. And I felt like he was with me the whole way. So whatever way you find is the best. It could be dream visits as well. As Irene just had that incredible dream visit about the conference as well with Carly. But there are just many ways that they try to show us that they're here with us.
Great. And so, anything else you'd like to pass on with parents that you've learned besides how to sense them?
I think that one of the things is that it's important to look for the collateral beauty, because this journey is not all sad. And I also think that that it's important to work towards raising our vibrations. And I think that there's a lot of different ways to do that, but eating healthfully, exercising, being in nature, forest bathing, different things that we might not usually have time to do. Especially in the early years, it's really important to take time to do those things, because that's where our kids connect with us best, as well as when we're sleeping. I believe that when we're sleeping, we're spending time with our kids in there, wherever they are. And then we don't necessarily always remember it when we wake up. But yeah, I think that it's important for all of us to find the best way to connect with our children. And it doesn't have to be the same way that anyone else does. So.
Oh my, what an evening. So to wrap it up, what would you like to share, please, about your belief or knowing about there being a timing and a meaning behind your children's passing?
Well, there was definitely a timing and a meaning, because for Chelsea, I guess I didn't necessarily understand it at the time, but with Morgan, before he left for China, as we were packing all of his things, this was the second time he was leaving. He said, "Mom, I don't think I'm coming back from China this time," as we're in his room. And I said, "Morgan, you don't even have to go. You have enough credits. There's no reason for you to go. Just stay here, be a cheerleader, and have fun." And he said, "No, Mom, I'll be okay." And I think, just like Lynn said, that Devin said he was fine, or that the mediums were saying that Devin was fine, I think that Morgan saying he would be okay is the same kind of thing. And I think he knew that he was going to transition early, but from the time that I held him in my arms when I first had him, I knew I wasn't going to have him long. And so I was a helicopter mom to Morgan. I was always wanting to know where he was going, wanting to make sure he was safe. Whereas with my two daughters, I never felt that way, and I never understood why, but I now know why.
Yeah.
I knew myself.
Well, my goodness, I'm always gobsmacked, but especially this evening from this. And, especially with you three, your outreach speaks so loudly. I mean, some of these themes we're talking about, there's a meaning and there's a bigger picture. And with you three, that's exemplified just so powerfully. So anything else you'd like to share in parting, Elizabeth?
No, I'd love for Irene and Lynn maybe to share something. But again, I'm so grateful to everyone who's a part of this organization, not just the people who are volunteering, but all of the members as well. It's just such a wonderful thing to have a community of like-minded souls. And I feel that Helping Parents Heal is truly a family. And I feel grateful to have this wonderful family. But Irene and Lynn, would you like to say something just to...
I agree with everything you say. And I think we all in Helping Parents Heal have an obligation to tell the world, to spread the word, let them know that our kids are okay, that your kids are okay. And if we do that, we could change the world.
Totally agree with everything said. I think we're part of the plan. Our kids are part of the plan. And I'm just grateful to be here with you amazing people.
Yeah, and to reiterate, follow up what Irene said, you know, the saying, when a child passes, that's the worst of the worst. Well, if they see parents finding a way to be joyful and find the meaning, that's a powerful example for everyone else, no matter what they're going through. So I love the vision, and I'm so honored to be part of this. Good night. God bless you all.
Thank you,
Good
Mark.
night, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so
night.
much. Good night.
Love you all. Bye-bye.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Hey, Lynn, Elizabeth, Irene, if you could
Yeah.
stay on for a second, please.
Sure.
So I just gotta say,
Oh,
our
we lost
Lynn,
Elizabeth.
who's out of her comfort zone, really didn't want to talk. And like, was that one of the best presentations you've ever
It
seen?
was. It was.
Oh,
Wow.
you're too kind. Thank you.
No,
It was.
really.
Wait till you see the recording, Lynn. You're
I
like,
would
Yeah.
rather not, but thank you.
you're a superstar. All
You
right.
are. You
Had to
are.
mention it.
Thanks.
Elizabeth. All right.
Love
well,
you.
Take care.
Bye.
Love
All
you.
right. Bye, everybody.